Welcome to part 2 of developing some skills using watercolor paint. Okay, so in your art kit you have 2 of the smaller pages of this size. We are going to use one of these ones to make a little bit of a landscape artwork. Okay, so the first thing I want you guys to do is to get on some kind of a device, and I'm just going to swing you over here to my desktop. And you're going to search up some landscape images just for something to reference and something to look at. So what you are looking for within choosing one that you're going to sort of be inspired by or look off of is you want to have something that has like a background, a foreground, and kind of a middle ground, so it has layers to it. So if I look at this one and pop it up, okay, I'm just going to zero in on it closer. Okay, so looking at this one, you can see like the really bright sky in the background looks really far away. There's those mountains in sort of the what I would call middle ground, so all the kind of blue area. And in the foreground is like really close up, you have those little flowers and you see tons of detail in there. Something like that would be a really good option because it has some things to work with and it has sort of those levels of foreground, middle ground, background. Let's take a look at this one, which isn't necessarily a good choice for this, for what we want to do here, because it doesn't really have those different levels. It's all sort of just kind of, there's a little bit of a background and a middle ground there, but it's kind of just all the same. So we want to choose something else kind of like this one. This one's a good choice too. So looking at the really background sky where it's kind of like that orangey color, you can see that's really far away. You can see kind of a middle ground where those lighter mountains, and then in front of that there's kind of that other blue, darker blue tree area, and then there's the green kind of trees in front, and then the river, and then the rocks like right close in front. So you have background, there's a couple of middle grounds there, and there's like things right in the foreground in front. That's another good example. This one here is good too. Looking at like the sky is really far away, there's these middle mountains here, and then in kind of the foreground area there's that sort of little village area. So something that has layers to it. Okay, so hopefully that that makes sense to you guys. So find an image and then have that popped up on your screen, and that'd be your first step. So one of the reasons that I wanted you guys to choose a landscape image to go off of that has like a background, foreground, middle ground is because I want you to be starting to understand that working in layers is how to make well painted artwork using watercolors. So I've made this drawing or this painting for you guys, but I did it in I think 5 or 6 different stages. And so I've got a sped up version of each one of those for you, so you don't have to watch me forever make a whole painting. I've sped it up like, you know, really, really fast, so you can see the process that I went through in creating this. And before I show that to you guys, I want to just point out that when you're watching it, you really want to make note of me starting really, really light and thinking about what colors are in that background. And then each layer that I do, I'm building up on top of that. And each layer that I build up is getting more detail within it. So yeah, watch the sped up version of me making this one, and then you'll see how you use layers to create a watercolor artwork. that little video of seeing me create that lets you guys kind of get a little bit of an insight into the process, and that it's not just sort of done in one go, is that you let the paint dry and then you keep going back into it. And sometimes you're using a lot of water on your brush with a little bit of paint, and sometimes you're using a lot of paint on your brush with a little bit of water. And you can use tools like using a paper towel or some kind of tissue and lifting some of the paint off. If you noticed areas that I was working as well, like if I didn't like an area, you can go back in there even once it's dry and add some water into it, and be kind of playing with it and moving the color and the paint around until you're sort of happy with it. So I want you guys to understand that it's a process, and it's not just sort of a one-shot go, but that it's about building layers. So I want you to think about at least having 5 to 6 times of you leaving it to dry and then going back into that artwork again, leaving it to dry and going back into it again. And each time you're building up layers, and you're building up on top of what you've done. And also when you're starting out, you want to think about, okay, I'm doing that background first, and then I'm going to move forward and think, okay, what's next? I'm going to do my middle ground next. And then the last thing you would be doing is putting the foreground in. And the foreground will have the most details. Okay, so my foreground here is these kind of this tree in front. I can even say some of these hills and the trees there are sort of part of the foreground. The yellow sort of hills in the back are my middle ground, and then the sky is my background. So really thinking about what you would do first and how you're going to layer those paints and those colors, and sort of building from the bottom forward.